Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Gyanamurtim Dandvaititam Gaganasadrisham Tattvamashadi Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tanamami. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. We salute the leader of our souls, through whose grace our ignorance is dispelled, who is beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, life and death, and all other pairs of opposites. We recognize that one is the only witness to the changing phenomena of this universe. May we through that grace go beyond darkness and delusion and realize the truth in this very life. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman Tamatmastam Yenu Pashanti Diraha Tesham Shanti Shashvati Netaresham. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. That one, the eternal among non-eternal things, the intelligence of the most intelligent ones, who, though ever one, fulfills the desires of the many. The wise ones realize that one as dwelling in their very self. To them belong peace, and to none else. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidveshavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with what we study. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. We are presently here in San Francisco at its SRV Center and housed inside of the Healing Center of San Francisco. And we are live streaming to you from that location after a week's break from our from our Hawaii location. Next week we will be in our Portland location live streaming towards you with all of these Vedic axioms and truths and marvelous teachings of the Advaita Vedanta. And we welcome you here to this atmosphere of Jnana Yoga. Today's class on Shankara and the Upanishad, so we will honor the great Shankara, whose birthday is this month, along with Lord Buddha's, by looking deeply into one of the commentaries he did on one of the great Upanishads, 108 of them, to be exact, 11 of them which he managed to comment on, find time for, in the brief 32 years he was in the body. So that's the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, and we've been studying it for quite some time. And we are a bit behind the Portland Sangha in this study. They're already reaching the last chapter in this coming week, as I said. So we're looking at the beginning of chapter 3 here, as we finished chapter 2 last time. So if you are following the text, which is often a good idea to do so you come to know your subject thoroughly, you know that chapter 3 is, if you've done an advanced study of it, is pretty much falling under the heading of form and formlessness. The Vedic rishis for a long time did ritual and as any culture does in its early time, historically speaking. And they do the ritual to the gods, usually gods that are associated with the elements, 5 great elements: air, earth, fire, water, and ether. And so there are deities that are assigned to these elements. We look at them inside of ourselves as solidity, liquidity, radiance, all-pervasiveness, homogeneity, if you want to use more modern terminology for them. And this is where the spiritual art forms of Tantra and Vedanta come together, or worship of God with form and meditation on God beyond form. Those two things are specifically noted and assigned in this chapter we are moving into now, chapter 3. And we could almost call the subtitle of it the all-pervasiveness of divine reality, or the all-pervasiveness is Brahman. All-pervasiveness and non-transformation and birthless deathlessness being 3 of the main pillars or axioms that non-duality is based upon, no matter what tradition you look into. This idea of immortality, which isn't necessarily a very good word, because it oftentimes has to do in people's minds with living a long time, longevity. And it's not that. It's that the soul is birthless and deathless. It's not that it lives and dies. So it conveys a slightly skewed meaning of the word, but we call it indivisibility or eternity or aparinama, non-transformation. There are words in Sanskrit that fit it better, so that's why we study the great Deva Bhashya, language of the ancient rishis who described these realizations in the Upanishads that they had. And any good realization, of course, has to be gained by piercing through veils. And they noted the main veils to pierce through are basically name and form. Who would have thunk, as the saying goes, that the very forms that you're occupying and the very forms that you're seeing around you and the very 5 gods of air, earth, fire, and water, and ether that you began worshipping are those very things that are obscuring what you're looking for. It's a rather dichotomous position that the embodied soul finds himself in. We were saying at satsang last night, for instance, that the eternity of everything is noted, not just the eternity of Brahman, the Almighty Father, if we would call it that in Christianity, but also the eternity of the soul, that it's always there witnessing itself. It's even witnessing its own births and deaths. If you can rise high enough in your consciousness to man that station of transcendence, then you'll see that you can look back on a whole series of lifetimes. The yogis say that one of the early things that comes to you in deep meditation is that vision of seeing your own lifetimes. Then also the eternity of nature. We see that it goes on in cycles. And we're not talking here just in terms of a 1,320,000,000 year cycles or something, but we're talking about something that transcends time, transcends space, which is rather the word for revelation, as you see by this chart we're going to look at soon, prakasha. The word akasha means space. And so prakasha sort of infers something that's looking on at space, as if space were something inside of it. Space was something that it occupies and then gives up at its own will, like you would occupy a dreaming state tonight and give it up when you wake up, or you would occupy the deep sleep state later on in the night and give that up and come back to form. So this coming in and out of form and going back into formless state has been noted for a long time, and it's philosophically sound and very profound and deep, no doubt, but it's also very practical. It's something you can look at as just something that is going on all the time in the waves of your consciousness, what yoga would call vrittis, or vibration. Science would call vibration, or the ancient tantricists even call it spandas, or vibrational spheres that the consciousness visits and abandons at will, hopefully at will. not bound in by them. So the eternity of nature is there, and then the eternity of Maya too, this conundrum that we find ourselves in, that is a veiling power and a distorting power. And that's pretty much what the first sloka of chapter 3 is all on about. If I could read it to you. It is the self-same one who exists alone at the time of creation and dissolution of the universe that assumes manifold powers and appears as the Divine Lord by virtue of its inscrutable power of Maya. It is that protects all the worlds and controls all the various forces working therein. And those who realize this being become immortal. They realize their birthless, deathless state. So we're talking about a formless reality that nevertheless can veil itself with its own power. If you remember back to our Te Dhyan Yoga Nugatu Apashan Devatma Shakti Swagunayar Nagudam, that is one of the early slokas in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad in the first chapter that says, by meditation they finally came to see the true nature of themselves, the formless, deathless Brahman, who by dint of his own powers veils itself, you see. And then those veils falling in the intellect of mankind and obscuring the wisdom of the Atman, so that that Brahman was there all the time, but the limiting powers of the intellect wasn't able to see it because it had veiled itself in one way or another, either consciously in the case of Ishvara or unconsciously in the case of living beings, by this veiling and distorting power that's here in the chart called Vikshepa and Avarana. Vikshepa is the power of distortion, Avarana the power of covering. So this is how the ancient rishis of India described the predicament we find ourselves in, that the mind is falling under these two powers called, in other words, tamas and rajas, if you recognize those words. The three gunas. Tamas completely obscures or veils the nature of reality in the mind. Rajas distorts and makes it look like something else other than what it is. So you're looking at the world, and instead of seeing Brahman, you're seeing the world, that kind of distortion. Whereas the seers are looking at the world and seeing nothing but the manifest Brahman. There's just one Brahman, sometimes it's manifested, sometimes it's unmanifested, and it's a matter of ease and obviousness to them, but to the rest of us, we're not seeing that one reality, or we fall out of recognition of it due to the circumstances and situations of life that change across the thoughtscape, you see, across the periphery of the mind, falling under the auspice or the control of tamas and rajas, or the veiling and distorting power of Maya. So that Maya too is eternal, and so all of these things being eternal and always in existence, then the seers want to look at them all. And such great seers as Sri Krishna very early on have said that. Basically, they know the reality behind both the changing and the unchanging, and they've come to see it both as Brahman. One they call Nirguna Brahman, Brahman without attributes, and the other they call Saguna Brahman, Brahman with attributes. Note the term, guna. It's either with the gunas or it's without the gunas. When it's without the gunas, it tends to go formless, and when it's accompanied by the gunas, it tends to come with form. Well, that's all well and good, but what we don't want is to fall under the veiling power and distorting power of the gunas. We want to keep to this prakasha shakti, this revelatory power, as long as we're in form. And we need to keep the mind polished, the intellect sharp, and the ego out of the picture, and the thoughts buoyant. Those four things are what the mind's made of: ego, intelligence, thought, and mind itself. Dual mind, that is. The tendency towards and penchant for dualities. I'm good today, I'm bad tomorrow, I have virtue now, I have vice later. Going back and forth, ping-ponging between those two things. Man never finds any profound solution to the predicament, and gets led into the habit of thinking in terms of duality, and therefore is bereft of the boon of thinking in non-dual terms, or you might call it not thinking or non-thinking, transcending thought. He can lift himself out of his stream of thought and look on it as if Buddha was looking on a river. So this subtitle, The All-Pervasiveness of Brahman, is what the chapter 3, you could almost subtitle the whole third chapter of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad with that appellation. So you see here, to look a little bit deeper into these powers, Prakasha Shakti is the revealing power, and the quote here says, Maya is an insentient force that, though invested with inherent powers of obscuration and distortion, nevertheless is present to drive beings towards remembrance and enlightenment. The Tantric adepts state that she covers our eyes with one hand but leads us towards freedom with the other. This directive power is called Prakasha Shakti. Prakasha is the revelatory light. Prakashaka is the revealer. And Prakashya is the thing revealed. So there's always a triple aspect to everything. That is, if you stay in terms of dualities, good and bad, say, then you never know that there's something called transcendent, good, bad, and transcendent. Or you stay in terms of virtue and vice, and then you never know there's something as divine qualities, you see. So there's always a back door out of dualities. It's a triple teaching. Everything comes in terms of three, and so those triputis, they're called in Sanskrit. You always have to think in terms of a way out of the mind's penchant, again, for manning itself up just inside the dual view. If thine eye be single, you should know the truth. So you have to find that higher way. Well, this Prakasha Shakti is the higher guna of the three. Otherwise, you're staying under the auspice of Avarana Shakti. That is the power of obscuration. The 3 points there is that it veils the mind on individual, collective, and cosmic levels, which is why I put up this chart, because we have to start thinking in terms of another kind of triputi, meaning individual, collective, and cosmic. Most people are thinking only in terms of their individual self, their ego. Only myself and no one else. It's not just selfishness I'm talking about here either, it's just the way they think. They don't think in terms of a collective body out there. And when they don't think in terms of collective body, or let's say if they do think of in terms of collective body, the collective body only includes the human beings of this earth. But what the collective body means to the rishis, the great seers, or of any religion that has a great hierarchy or has figured out the cosmology of things, not just past the 5 elements and its gods, but the whole cosmology beyond the universe, begins to think in terms of the collective body as including your ancestors. And it begins to think in terms of the collective body including the gods and goddesses. There's where your deities are. And it begins to think in terms of everything being included in the sweep of the Gyanakasha, one of those divine spaces that holds rishis and seers, innumerable illumined souls who are keeping subtle bodies and causal bodies to work with beings on earth. And also in terms of a trinity, which this chart really shows. Basically, you could say Tamasakamatra engaged in withdrawing the worlds. Shiva would, Mahadeva, the Lord of dissolution is called tamasic on the cosmic level, because he's going to bring everything into a state of dissolution. He's going to dissolve it all. See? While Vishnu is holding it, you see, preserving it. So he's going to be called sattvic, you see. And Brahma is going to be called rajasic, because he's always creating the thing again. Active. So generally speaking, there is a third level, cosmic level. There's the individual level, all of us. You see each of us in our own individual state. And there's the collective body of beings, which are all there contained in the great mind called Mahat. And then there's the cosmic level of beings, which forms the most subtlest of all trinities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And therefore, you see that our three friends here, our three gunas, or the three Shaktis, they're Avarana, Vikshepa, and Prakasha, are going to appear again in the cosmic and the collective level, and also they're going to appear finally at the cosmic level. So we have to keep the three worlds in mind. See, that's why. So may there be peace to the three worlds. We always chant in the most famous of all mantras in India is the Gayatri, probably said by millions of people. They go Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha Tat Savitur Varenyan Bhargo Devasya Dhimohi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. May those three worlds be protected by the Divine Mother. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May peace come to all three of them. So in those three worlds, we have to keep all of those in mind. And then if we do, we're thinking in terms of the cosmic body. You see, the word cosmos in English has a problem because we're thinking of it as this cosmos here, only the physical universe with planets. And the planets are spinning around and they're causing some sort of sound, you see, and that's called the music of the spheres. And then you invent this whole New Age philosophy that doesn't go very deep at all. It only still is attached to the physical, which is the problem with the Western mind trying to understand the Eastern teachings, is it cannot let go of its death grasp on the atomic particle. Until it lets go of its death grasp on the Bhuta Kasha, the Akasha of physical things, then it will never understand that the immortal being, you see, that the Upanishad is trying to tell us about here, nor will it even begin to conceive of its cosmic form, you see, like the Trinity. When Christ said in the beginning was the Word, he's speaking about the Trinity, because that's where all creation, preservation, and destruction takes place. In the beginning was the Word, it was the Word, it was with God, and then it was God. That's three things. And you haven't thought of those in terms of a Triputi being presided over by a triple power, all based on the power of vibration coming out of the Word. See? And the Word is pure intelligence. Otherwise, these wouldn't be so profound. Even in written form, on parchment or on paper, black markings, scrigglings on paper wouldn't be so profound and cause people to go into samadhi just by seeing them, or think deeper, think beyond the box. You see? The boxed set. See, I'm going to go out and buy a boxed set of something. See, so there's a boxed set of 5 spaces inside of you, or 3 worlds. So you're not thinking outside the box unless you buy the box set. And unwrap them and look in and see what's inside of them. If you look inside the first, you'll find insects and animals and humans and microorganisms and so forth and so on. But if you look inside the second box, then you'll find the celestials and the ancestors and the demigods and the siddhas and the munis and the elementals and a whole host of other beings that are occupying a space right next to you, almost hand in glove, that you can't see because you're dependent on the 5 senses only. Senses are outward going, therefore they're defective. That's the final pronunciation of the seers of India. The senses are defective because they're outward going. So you have to develop subtle senses, and you do that in meditation. Actually, you take up your subtle senses when you dream, but you're not aware of what you're doing. When you meditate and you man yourself consciously with the subtle senses, then you begin to see inside. The kingdoms of heaven is the first thing you'll see, and that's what we're talking about, these levels of Akasha, as they called them earlier. Christ called them the kingdoms of heaven. So beginning to look inside, one's discovering the hierarchy or the cosmology of things. You start with cosmology, and then pretty soon you'll develop a philosophy, and from the philosophy you'll develop spirituality. You know, like Buddha seeing everything from outside of the river of time, and he was uncovering his Buddha nature and seeing everything from that standpoint, and then coming back to tell others about it. although it was a little hard to get him to talk about it. Because once he'd had the experience, he was speechless. It tends to take away the tongue and books and wisdom and all of that. As Krishna says, you must know that there's an end to knowledge. It's called truth. So when you know the truth and the truth sets you free, then knowledge stops. It falls in abeyance back inside of you. It's been your knowledge all along, but you haven't invested yourself with it yet. So to get rid of ignorance, you invest yourself with knowledge. And then to transcend knowledge, you understand the truth. And you reach the end of your transmigratory process. No more birth in the womb of matter for me. Ramprasad sings, only emanation from my Divine Mother. No more birth in the womb of matter for me. A nice Zen koan, if you will, Vedantic koan. Only emanation from my Divine Mother. So tomorrow's Mother's Day. So in these two classes today and tomorrow, you'll see sprinkled in a lot about Mother. Here she is here as the backdrop to this chart. Mother Kali. Sri Ramakrishna has brought her forward from the cremation grounds of Mother India, where she breathes the living mantra into souls and frees them after their transmigratory process ends. And if their transmigratory process hasn't ended and they still have desires, they still have work to do and so forth, then she will direct them to the various akashas along subtle nadis inside of the human body. In the subtle body, nerve endings, nerves, hundreds and thousands of them, by which the soul, the mind soul, is conducted to wherever it's going. Hopefully not just to heaven and to its ancestors, Lord Buddha said, but beyond that, transcendent of that, to a higher freedom. So the study of akashas and prakasha, then you can see how space and time are connected, basically, if you want to put it in Western terms. Space and time, not just physical space and linear time, but a kind of space that's subtle and a kind of time that's transcendent or eternal, are always connected to one another. And when you start to make those connections, then you're brooking the realm of the seers. You see, oh, I'm qualifying myself to be a knower of Brahman. This is a whole different area of consciousness that is seldom seen, where few rarely venture into the realm of formlessness, because that's a stark reality at first for people. To feel bereft of their ego, bereft of their form. Even giving up the physical body, which is usually so dear to people, becomes hard to them. There's some sort of clinging to life going on there, as Father of Yoga says. It's the fifth and deepest hell, according to him, is clinging to life. Why do you cling to life when eternal life is all about you? We just said everything's eternal. This Brahman, the soul, nature, and Maya. Why are you living in terms of beginnings, middles, and ends? Oh, I'm going to begin now. Oh, now I'm moving along. Oh, my end is coming. You see? Why think in those terms? Time and space, connect them inside of you and see how the soul journeys or sojourns from place to place. And then finally give up this thirst for life. Don't cling to it. This thirst for life forever quench. It drags from birth to death, and death to birth to soul. He conquers all who conquers self. Know this and never yield. Say Om Tat Sat Om. Those are Swami Vivekananda's words. This thirst for life forever quench. So this limited life, this gray little study of a life, he called it. People hunkered down into one little space, trying to encapsulate the infinite ether into one little body. It's not going to work. You have to open that up, to let that go. It's like splitting an atom. You're going to release a huge power, but if you split an atom of knowledge inside of your head, you're going to release a great light. Hopefully for others to see, like Buddha and Ramakrishna did. So All of this is sort of a preamble to this subtitle, The All-Pervasiveness is Brahman. The next series of charts you will see, and we'll hopefully take all of Chapter 3 in one class, or maybe two classes, because all the slokas, as beautiful and poetic as they are, can be taken almost in one bite. They all relate to each other. Let's take a few of them. We read number 1. Number 2 says, that one who protects and controls the worlds by its own powers, that is Rudra, Shiva. There is no one beside it that can make it a second. O men, he is present inside the hearts of all beings. After projecting and maintaining all the worlds, finally withdraws them into itself. So he dissolves the mind streams of all beings back into the highest form, back into the word from which they came, if you want to put it that way. Though God, the creator of heaven and earth, is one only, yet it is the real owner of all eyes, faces, hands, feet in this universe. It is that one who inspires them all to do their respective duties in accordance with the knowledge, past actions, and tendencies of the various beings with whom they appear to be associated. May that one who created the gods and who supports them, who is the origin also of the cosmic soul, he brings in that third level, the cosmic, who confers bliss and wisdom on the devoted, destroying their sins and sorrows and punishing all breaches of law, may that one, the great seer, the Lord of all, endow us with good thoughts. O Lord, who blesses all creatures by revealing the Vedas, deign to make us happy by that calm and blissful self, which roots out terror as well as sin. O revealer of the Vedic truths, deign to make propitious that arrow which thou holdest in thy hand for shooting at somebody. O protector of devotees, do not destroy that benign personal form of thine which is manifested as the universe. The universe is God in manifested form. That's what I was saying. We're not seeing that. We're seeing a world as if it were real. But the real implication of the world is unreal, which is a great statement of Vedanta. It means that it's only God there. It's not a world. It's not that there's just emptiness there. There's fullness there. There's the manifest Brahman there. That's what you have to understand about the Vedanta. Higher than the personal God, that is this Trinity, is the Supreme Lord, who is concealed in all beings according to their bodies, and who, though remaining single, envelops the whole universe. Knowing that to be the Lord, one becomes immortal. I have realized this great being who shines effulgent like the sun beyond all darkness. One passes beyond death only by realizing that. There is no way of escape from the cycle of births and deaths otherwise. Realize your divine eternal nature. There is not higher than or different from it, not greater or more minute than it. Rooted in its own glory, it stands like a tree, one without a second and immovable. By that being the whole universe is permeated. That being is far beyond this world, is formless and free from misery. They who know this become immortal, but all others indeed have to suffer misery. Therefore, that divine Lord, being all-pervading, omnipresent, and benevolent, dwells in the hearts of all beings and makes use of all faces, heads, and necks in this world. This self is indeed the mighty Lord. It is imperishable, eternal light that controls everything. It guides the intellect of all beings so as to enable them to gain that extremely pure state called mukti. That's liberation from form. Assuming a form of the size of a thumb, by virtue of the intellect, emotion, imagination, and will, the infinite being dwells in those hearts of creatures as their eternal self. And those who realize this become immortal. Those are the first 13 slokas of a 21 sloka chapter, and that's what I want to cover today. So, the first sloka we made up with the Prakasha Shakti, the revelatory power, and we see that the only way to create a universe is to assume a form, and when you assume a form, it's a covering, and that's the first trick to Maya. The first veil to seeing the Lord is you have to realize that it's not the formless Brahman you're seeing here. That doesn't exist here. Or you could say it only exists as an unseen substratum behind everything. We were with Swami Damodarananda in India. He's quite elderly now. And he told a story. He said, there was a teacher and a student the student came and said, "You have been speaking all along about the all-pervasiveness of Brahman, how Brahman is in everything. But yet it's not a thing. Brahman can't be objectified. I don't understand this. This is a contradiction seeming. The Brahman is here, but it's not here. Can you explain this to me?" And this teacher said it was a beautiful sunny morning and they were outside. Morning dew was everywhere. So he said, just like all these dewdrops, the sun is shining in all of them. Just like that, Brahman is shining in all objects, but it's not the object. Is the sun the dewdrop? See? So shining in all dewdrops, that is, in all these human forms, is Brahman, but it's not the form. It just mans the form and gives it up. And when it mans the form, it's going to have to do it through a veiling power. It's going to have to veil its true nature, which is formless. So the covering comes over that. A covering which, by the way, does not affect the purity of Brahman. As one of these slokas said, it's ever pure. Shuddhi. It's ever pure. So as the covering happens, it doesn't affect Brahman itself. Like Sri Ramakrishna used to say, smells good and bad cross the air, but the air just carries them. Not really affected by them, they pass. So this covering power appears and passes. And then also this sleight of hand that Maya pulls over the mind of human beings is called Vikshepa Shakti, the power of distortion. It begins to make something look like other than what it is. There I'm looking at my friend, and there's really Brahman there, but I'm seeing him as a body-mind mechanism. See? So I'm looking at his individual self instead of his indivisible self. I'm looking at his individual self instead of his indivisible self. So that's the power of distortion. I'm not seeing my wife, my child, so forth, as the formless Brahman. And even if I see them as God, or I say I see them as God, I'm still catering to their form. Well, I hope your form still exists. I hope it exists forever. I hope it grows up and takes care of my form. See? Yeah. So the subtle distorting power of Maya is very clever, you see, in a sense. We don't have to think of it as an incarnate devil, because we already read that it's insentient. It's not out to get you. But you, by imbibing it, by letting Maya in to the cracks of your thinking consciousness, in sleep and in waking, without keeping vigil, knowing yourself to be the eternal, nameless, formless Brahman, then Maya seeps in, you see, and you begin to think. Your society begins to think in the wrong way. And your upbringing is given to you in the wrong way. Therefore, you're not being given the acid-like truth that sobers you at every turn, and which causes you to look into the chasm of death. See? I have received a command from the Divine Mother of the Universe that death must die. Ram Prasad sings in one of his songs. So I must visit the abode of death and give him a good talking to, you see. You cannot scare me anymore. I know myself to be eternal, birthless, deathless, timeless, spaceless, transcendent of all your powers. Which is exactly what you're going to have to say to them when you meet them. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. You're going to have to say, thank you very much, Lord Brahma, for your creation. Take it back. I'm done with it. Because Brahman is acreate. Whenever creation happens, a form happens. Whether it's a world or a person or a god, a form is happening. So the power of Maya is working, you see. That's the conclusion you make. Oh, guess what? Maya is working, so the game's afoot. And the only way to see through the game that's afoot is to become a Sherlock Holmes. And the Sherlock Holmes discovering the clues inside of you. See? Not just external clues to some heinous crime that was committed outward in the realm of sin and morality and immorality, but the clues to some ruse that was pulled on you, some wool that was pulled over your eyes on the level of distortion and covering that caused you to forget your true nature as formless. Imagine then remembering your true nature as formless and then coming back to the body. Bodhisattva, Jivan Mukta, Avatar. Then all of a sudden you're seeing both sides now. Sri Ramakrishna said it's like walking across the bulk of a rice field. You can see both sides, but you're up out of the rice field, so you don't need sandals, you see. If you go down in the rice field, you've got to put on sandals because of all the stubble. But here you can walk barefoot, you see. You can be free. You can walk across the bulk and see both sides. He's called it Bhava Mukta. Mother Kali came to me, put me in a state of Bhava Mukta, where I could see the transcendent Brahman as formless, but I could also see the worlds of name and form at the same time. That's the look of the avatar. That's the perspective of those beings. And having had it described to us, then we should try and assume that. Try and envision what it's like to hold that kind of consciousness. It'll be very good for us. It'll be very expanding. The Upanishads tell us, may our body experience great health, may our prana flow unimpeded, and may our minds expand in the capacity to know Brahman. So there's your chance to expand your capacity to know Brahman, is by meditating on Saguna Brahman, God with form. That's the best thing you can do with God with form. Because God with form is not a savior. God with form is an exemplar. It does not come to die for your sins, it comes to show you the light. That's the difference between Avatar in the East and the Divine Incarnation in the West. That is the way the Western person is beginning to look at the Divine Being, if they even believe in such. Now, most of them don't. But if they do, they're looking at him as a savior. Oh, please save me. But you have to save yourself from your own self-created delusion. You bought into the veiling and distorting power of Maya, and now be off with them. That's what Vivekananda said. You are never in Maya. Maya is in you. You let it in, so get rid of it. You let it in, you can kick it out. And that might as well be your practice until such a time when you can meditate or read a scripture. Might as well just say, my practice as of right now is getting rid of the veiling and distorting power of Maya so that I can see clearly. And as I do, I find my consciousness rising to this center, you see, because here's the center of clear vision. So seeing beyond all the diversities and the dualities and the machinations of Maya, you see, the sleight of hand. Working through the labyrinth of the mind in delusion. So we say here that Avarona Shakti veils the mind and is related to the guna of tamas, slothfulness, lethargy, heaviness, inertia. You can put it scientifically or you can put it emotionally or psychologically. Whatever the case, that guna is there as the weightiness, the heaviness, the inert side of things, the brooding of the mind. See? Its lowest turn, its static state. See? And Vikshepa Shakti then distorts. It's related to the guna of rajas, frenetic activity, restlessness. This is a teaching peculiar to the Vedanta. You won't find the teaching of the gunas anywhere else. What are the two best things about the gunas? One, they help you pinpoint. They give you a way of pinpointing where your mind is in any given time. You don't think the great beings experience tamas, then you don't know what the dark night of the soul is. You haven't suffered enough yet, or taken on suffering of others to know that. So when tamas comes over the mind, we don't know it. We call it, I'm in a bad mood, or I'm depressed. But when tamas come over the mind of a illumined soul, they say, my mind is in tamas, but I'm the Atman. And they just identify with their mind. Their mind is not the self. The intellect is not the self. The ego is not the self. Only the self is the self. Buddha said as much. The self is master of the self. Who else would the self be? And the Buddhists nowadays get all up in arms about the word self. So what's the problem with it? Buddha used it in the Dhammapada. He just made a distinction between the Supreme Self and the Ego Self, that's all. One's Ahamkara, the other's Atman. One's Anatman, the other's Atman. Don't get all bent out of shape because of words. Just realize the essence in them. Sit here, listen for 3 hours to a teacher, and 95% you hear of truth you agree with. The other 5% say, I don't agree with that, see. And then your issue begins. You see, I have an issue with that teacher because I don't agree with everything he says. So your issue needs resolution. So you start thinking. So you resolve it somehow. And then you get relief. See? And then the next issue comes. You never get rid of issues. See, you went the wrong direction. Instead of looking into that 5% that you didn't agree with, you should have looked at that 95% that was true. Because that's where truth lies. The door to freedom lies in truth, not in issues. So, where flows the stream of knowledge, truth, and the bliss that follows both. That's how Vivekananda put it. Knowledge first, truth comes, then bliss comes. He didn't say where flows the stream of issues, solutions, and the relief that follows both. Relief is sattva, you see. You get a little sattva, but then your next issue comes around again, so you never get out of that cycle. Holy Mother put it this way, Sri Ramakrishna said hundreds and hundreds of things when he was alive, and they were all true. All you need to do is take one of them and understand it, and that will be enough for you. Ramakrishna himself said, what need do I know how many bottles of wine are in the tavern? One bottle will be enough for me. So, pondering truth will get you free. Don't ponder the untruth or create more issues where none should exist. Get free of issues and solutions. Even Einstein said, see, you can't solve problems at the same level you create them. You have to go to the next level to solve them. So you must rise out of tamas to rajas. You want to know how to get out of depression? Get active. And then rise out of activity to balance. You can't stay in activity because you'll be born in restless wombs again if you stay active all your life. Krishna says, those who are rajasic, they're born in rajasic wombs. So they're in the distorting power, you see, all the time. They're thinking action will get them free. Action never gets you free. Most likely gets you bound. Keeps you bound. He says, those in tamas fall. Those in rajas stay in the same place. Those in sattva rise. It's teaching right out of the Gita. So those in rajas stay the same place. They're going to die in their tracks and be born, taking up the same work they did last lifetime, trying to resolve something that can never be resolved. So you must transcend action. As Vivekananda put it, action is absolutely futile. It's only good for one thing, knowledge. If you can get knowledge out of action, then with knowledge you can get free. So there's one purpose for action, it's to get knowledge. Once you get knowledge, then you must use that knowledge. So that's where people rise out of restless activity, frenetic activity, or habitual activity into balance. And they're wonderful workers, these sattvic people. you might have noticed how long Buddha has lived, 2,550 years. How long Christ has lived, 2,000 years. How long Father of Yoga has lived, practically 2,000 years. How long Krishna has lived, for millennia. They're the most energy efficient machines that ever lived, because they stayed in sattva all the time. And when they weren't in sattva, they went higher, you see. They transcended sattva into nirvana and came back to sattva. So they're manning the body, they're taking on a form under the auspice of the Prakasha Shakti. What's that like? It clarifies the mind by revealing the actual nature of things, whereas Vikshepa Shakti distorts the actual nature of things. Makes good look bad and bad look good and so forth and so on. The good life is drinking and carousing and fighting and being a man, you see. Society puts out beer commercials, you see, alcohol and stuff and cigarettes, you see. That's the good life, you see. Drink in one hand, cigarette in the other. But she has a sword in one hand and a severed head in the other. So the society is making everything that's really negative look good, trying to foist that off on you. That's Maya working at the collective level, by the way. Maya works at the individual, Maya works at the cosmic, yes. The cosmic we can't do anything about. These are profoundly great beings, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Everything, every light of wisdom flows through them before it turns into the worlds. That's how they pervade the worlds and preside over the worlds, is that the light of Om is coming through them, and through them like a crystal chandelier, and reflecting into different colors, and those colors are the different worlds that are formed out of their very being. They are the original God with form, Trinity. Every good religion has a Trinity. And it's as if saying, the Trinity is saying, don't forget the triple principles. Beware of the dualities. Did we say two? Are we two? We said three. We are three, you see. So these triple teachings are very important. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. AUM of Om. Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. Avarana, Vikshepa, Prakasha. Look at them, study them, take them in, and be free. Knowledge leads to truth. Truth leads to bliss. And then you've learned the sattvic station. Now you can man it all the time. If you're in the body, sattva's fine, you see. A little boring. It's like ho-hum samadhi, right? So you want to get into a form of samadhi for excitement, you see, for divine excitement. I think I'll go formless again because I love death. I love that feeling of giving up form. Other people are cowering like cats in a corner. Meow. Afraid to death. That's why I took 9 lives. See? About 9 deaths. Let's look at that. And inside of looking at death, you'll find out that death is an illusion. That you've received a command from the mother herself that death must die. And the only way you can make it die is to see through it. Fear is there because you haven't mastered a thing. When you master a thing, fear goes away. Fear is the absence of knowledge. That's all. So mastering each one of these levels, whether you look at it in terms of the gunas, or you look at it in terms of the 3 worlds, or you look at it in terms of the 3 deities, is what you have to do. And if you know the systems, it's going to help you. Cosmology may not be the highest thing, and Vedanta doesn't touch it very much. Samkhya touches it, Yoga touches on it. Vedanta tends to say, let's go non-dual here on you. We're going to pull a non-dual move on you. Zen Buddhist style, you see. But that's not for everyone, not yet. Everyone will have to, eventually, be forced to look at death and see their formless nature beyond that, and that's what Vedanta says. The soul is eternal, and there's no such thing as eternal damnation. You will get your realization eventually. But in the meantime, there's the path of the sun and there's the path of the moon, as Krishna says in olden times. And most people are coursing along the path of the moon. That means the path of return to the ancestors, to the humans, to the ancestors, to the humans, then back to the ancestors again, and then back to the humans, and then on to the ancestors, you see. I can never see beyond my family, see, with its poor upbringing and its evil children. I never see beyond it and get beyond it. Until I finally learn how to be sattva and create a dharmic family, you see. Like this. This is a dharmic family, not a blood family. Because then you can sit and listen to high truths, ponder them. Did I give you your genealogy? Did I make you look the way you are? Did I make you think the way you are? Or am I trying to transform the way you think? Am I to blame for all your problems? No, I'm the solution to all your problems. So I'm not an ordinary father. Remember, the name is Babaji, revered father. See, somebody who can spout wisdom all day for years on end. You think I'm going to run out here? I never have yet. See, all you need to do is come and listen. And when you get filled, go away and squeeze your sponge and come back for more. You see, until such a time when you can keep your own torch lit. And if you can keep your own torch lit, why are you here? You know, if your fish is fried, go help others. But in the meantime, you're here to learn this profound truth, and that's an auspicious time in your life. Very auspicious time in your life. This ain't schoolwork or politics or business or science. It's a kind of psychology. It's called yoga psychology. So you'll never find a teaching in Western psychology about the three gunas. You'll never hear there about many bodies you've had in past lifetimes, because Freud and Jung never had Oriental people on their therapy table. They only had people who thought in terms of one lifetime inside that box. So this transcends the conventional, and it begins to skirt the transcendent. See? In the meantime, you have this cosmology to look at. It's breadcrumbs. It's connecting the dots. If those breadcrumbs have been pecked away by the little birds of forgetfulness, then you go inside and meditate. You don't have anywhere to go. See? And so you have to retrace your steps, blaze a new trail. See, the avatar comes back to blaze a new trail every 500, 600, 700 years for people who lost their machetes. You see, they're in the jungle without a knife, thick creepers. You see. But Ram Prasad sings, "Oh, if I could just clear 1 acre, I could build a temple there. I'd be very happy. I'll clear the rest later." You see, I could just clear 1 acre out of my mind and go there. There's my peace. And there in that temple, I could get to peace that passes all understanding. Not just any old peace. Ho-hum peace. See? I'll get the peace that passes all understanding. And I'll live in it. I'll revel in it. And I might even find somebody in the jungle who's cleared an acre, a neighbor, see, and invite them over. And instead of sharing Maya with them, like, how's the weather? Or what did you do today? I'll share this great wisdom, this great peace that I have with them. And we'll revel together, see. We'll be a spiritual family. We're starting a spiritual family here. Without the connections of genetics and karma and upbringing, and the stress and misery and suffering that comes from all that. Let's get free. So Prakasha Shakti relates to the guna of sattva, balance, and it exposes truth. Now, this about the three gunas, let's look more toward this chart and in accord with the second sloka. That one who controls the worlds by its own power is called Rudra, Shiva. Is indeed one only. There is no one beside it that can make it a second. O beings, that one is present in the hearts of all. After projecting and maintaining the worlds, he finally withdraws them into himself. So this appears to be three, but it's one being. Starts out projecting the worlds, sustains them, and then withdraws it back into its own being. Shiva's function at the end. So Rudra is a name for Shiva. Rudra means the terrible one. Everyone likes Vishnu, you see, because he sustains. Oh boy, let's have a party. The world, the suns are shining. Oh, no more suns. Shiva's coming. We don't like him very well, you see. You have to, he who loves the form of death and whom misery, who hugs the form of death and misery loves, to him the mother comes. See, that's Vivekananda's poem about Mother Kali. So you'll begin to love darkness, you see. Begin to look for peace. You're through with the restlessness of the world. You're through with the slothfulness of your mind. And now you just want peace. See? And you sit happily like Ramakrishna, like a child. Eating a few spices. Happy like a child. But Holy Mother once put a collection of spices in little bags, put it in his hand, and he walked out and walked into the river. Why did you do that? Oh, I guess it's because I tried to own something. See, the idea of possessing something got him disoriented, of holding something for the future. He couldn't button a shirt, he couldn't close a door. See, he was a wide open person. And if you tried to impose any limitation on that freedom of his, then it would disorient him. See? Put a gold coin in his hand, it would atrophy. See? Couldn't help it. That was his nature. He was showing us beyond sattva. He was so sattvic, his feet hardly touched the ground, they say, in the way he moved. He couldn't come and transform the world. He had to have Vivekananda do that. So he brought this great figure called Swami Vivekananda to do that. And now 5 million people are following him, and many, many other thousands are looking at him now in his 150th centenary this year. We were just in India seeing how grand that spectacle is and how far. We saw posters of him down in the Haight recently. Vivekananda, the great world teacher. So he's being reborn in a nice way. So I just thought I'd put this chart up there because we mentioned Rudra and Shiva. I think I showed it in San Francisco once already. This one. No, you didn't see the 8 subtle forms and 8 visible forms of Shiva here. Well, then you can see there from the very top of the chart, the 8 subtle forms are called Astamurti. Murti means form. And then Murti is just the 8 visible forms. This is another way of looking at how God is all-pervasive, so don't get confused by the iconography or the deities or the Sanskrit words. Just pretty much another way of saying this is how we're explaining that the Lord is all-pervasive in everything. So he's in fire. Agni is one of his signs. He's in water, Apo. He's in Oshadaya, earth. He's in Vayu, air. He's in Vidyut, lightning. He's in the clouds. He's in the moon, and he's in the sun. So those are his 8 visible forms. That's how they look, you see. You don't look at the sun and say, what a nice orb in the sky. You say, Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Surya Narayan. It's the sun god. It's Shiva himself shining there. That light is intelligence. It's not really just fire. It's the light of intelligence. Because the sun, all billions of the suns we see in the sky, actually came from intelligence. They came out of the idea in the mind of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The idea of light turned into suns, particles. Suns are just particles in an ocean of light. So, I say Ramakrishna Just like a billion suns put in a mold. You see, suns of wisdom. If you pierce the atom, a great explosion. If you pierce the atom of wisdom, a great implosion. So we see by the outside that everything is Brahman, or everything in this case is Shiva. See, he's in fire, he's in water. It reminds us of that Upanishadic quote, right? You know that's what I'm talking about? Om Jayu Shantihi Jayu Antariksham Shantihi Prithivi Shantihi Apaho Shantihi Oshadaya Shantihi Vanashpataya Shantihi. That is air, earth, fire, water, ether, all those 5 elements and their manifestations like lightning and clouds and so forth. That's just all manifestations of Brahman coming forth. I have to begin to look at it that way, because if I look at it as just an element, then I'm led toward the physical only, and I forget the subtle. Let's look at his subtle forms. Rudra, the wrathful one, I just mentioned that, and so did the verse of the Upanishad. Sarva, the perfect and complete. Pashupati, Lord of souls. Right now, in the ancient excavations in Mahendragara Valley in India, they're unearthing little statues of Pashupati, the oldest possible form. And it's Shiva. Pashupati is a name for Shiva. So way, way, way back, before the Vedasists probably came to India, when the Tantrasists were along the rivers, the Indus River, Hindu, then you had these worshippers of Shiva along the river, you see, and Shakti. They're unearthing statues of Shiva and Shakti. So Pashupati, Lord of souls, the most ancient of souls. Ugra, the all-powerful. Note how these are connected with their physical components, you see. Ashani, the thunderbolt, goes together with lightning. Paranya, clouds, and Bhava, existence, go together. And then Mahadeva, the great Lord, and Ishana, the sovereign being, presiding over all. The quote here says, in the case of Shiva, he has everything. Kartika, Ganesha, Lakshmi, Parvati. Still, he experiences 2 states. In the first, he is transfixed in the great yoga. See? That's Atmarama, is that down there somewhere? Here. First, he's transfixed in the great yoga. That's his first state. At that time, he is Atmarama, satisfied in the self. Next, he descends from samadhi, assumes an ego, and dances about, chanting Ram, Ram, Ram. That's Nataraj. See? You've seen the famous Nataraj statues come out of India. Everyone likes to put those on their altars. You see, the circle of fire around him. And he's got the mudras and so forth. This is pointing towards his foot, which is uplifted. You see, it's also Ganesh mantra. So Shiva has Kartika as one son, Ganesha as the other son, and Parvati as his wife. So he's a family man, as well as a transcendent yogi. So you could see that this teaching permeates the level of relationships too, or it should. You should see your wife as Shakti and she should see you as Shiva. And if that's not happening, then get a divorce. Find somebody who sees you as you are and learn to see them as they are, because you can live a whole lifetime not knowing each other. You might have noticed. You live that one existence that is worth living. That one existence where all desires are fulfilled. So the quote here at the bottom says, in the case of Shiva, he has everything. Kartika, Ganesha, Lakshmi, and Parvati. So it shows that he's a family man in that way. Then he descends out of that state and goes to Atmarama. He's like satisfied without anything. Satisfied in formlessness. It's a perfect combination. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you feel like form, sometimes you don't. So why shouldn't you just go between the two and have the best of both worlds? They're just one world after all. So just a quick study of this chart, a quick look. It's nothing that profound, but it does evince that perspective of Brahman, or in this case Shiva, in everything, the Lord in everything. He has his 8 subtle forms. He has his 8 visible forms. Now, at the end of that sloka, after projecting and maintaining the worlds, he finally withdraws everything into himself. So I have to show this. It's kind of a new warhorse. My book that I just finished 2 weeks ago is called Dissolving the Mind Stream, and this is the main chart in it. And you've seen it before. I've created the chart long before I created the book. And that book will be out soon, but it's a way of meditation that dissolves all form back into you, so that you can dissolve all physical principles first, air, earth, fire, water, ether, and then your senses, and your senses into the mind, your mind into the intellect into the great mind, which would be, we'd have to go back here to see the great mind, the Mahat, the Trinity, and then dissolve the Trinity into the Atman that Shiva's so happy with, and then dissolve the Atman into Brahman, dissolving the mind stream in stages. It's a classic meditation. In fact, let's read the quote on it at the bottom of the chart. The classic and comprehensive meditation in both yoga and Vedanta dissolves the elements into the senses into the subtle elements into the prana into the mind into the great mind, and the great mind into Om. That's pretty much the Trinity there again. Find Om in yourself, your Atman, and then dissolve that self into the great self called Brahman. So it's not like we're going to mix dirt and water here to get mud. You see, that's science. That's the external elements. We're going to dissolve these in our mind. Our mind is the laboratory for this. Why? Because the mind created it all. That's where the Western mind and the Eastern thinking go their own separate ways. Or at least theistically speaking, they think that God created the universe, you see, out of nothing, out of dust or something. It returns to dust. That might be symbolic. If it's taken symbolically, you can find some profundity in it. But the way the Indian mind has always thought and is always taught has been that all worlds got created out of the thinking mind. When the mind thinks, the worlds vibrate, and when it stops thinking, they go away. And your dreaming and waking and deep sleep state prove that to you every night. You dissolve the worlds every night. You bring them back in the morning. Certainly true of your individual self. So what about all of the collective mind? What about all of them? The gods, the ancestors, projecting their own worlds and withdrawing them back into sleep in Pralaya. Now you know why Shiva provides such a great function. He's a pretty busy man. Because they call on him to dissolve everything. Because when they dissolve everything, they get peace, Akasha. And when they project everything, they get restlessness. And when they get tired of everything, they get slothfulness. So, call on Shiva. See, we salute Brahma, the great creator. Everyone likes creation. Everyone likes to create. Everyone likes art. Expansion of things unnamed, unnumbered. And then everyone likes to sport in them. But nobody likes to bring them all to an end. Even when they get tired of them. Art gets old, music gets old, the body gets old. They can't call on Shiva to dissolve it all because they're afraid and they want to cling to that oldness. See? No, Shiva's the bringer of Brahma again. See? And that's only if you're thinking in terms of cycles. If you want out of cycles like Lord Buddha did, then Shiva will dissolve it for the last time for you. His Holy Mother said, that will be the last birth in which you get rid of all your desires. You will not have to come back here anymore. And she's saying that in a positive way, by the way. Because another time she said, may you never have to come back to hear it again. This whole place is filled with suffering. Rule number 1 of the Buddha, there is suffering. If you don't know there is suffering, then you can't be a Buddhist. hopefully you'll have compassion for that suffering and do something with your life. It's not supposed to render you into tamasic state of inertia, you see. You get busy with rajas and start helping people. But you have to have sattva to do that. If you're not balanced, you can't enter into the realm of rajas, like Vivekananda did here with us, and stay centered. So, knowledge of the three gunas, knowledge of the Trinity, knowledge of all of this, everything that you are made of, which is called the non-self, all the way up to here. From here on, Om, on in, is the self. From here out is the non-self. That's how they describe it. The non-self changes. The non-self is illusory, is unreal, is mutable, is transitory, is ephemeral. Pick any word you like from that category of words in English. Those are the best ones we can think of. Non-actual. A reflection, like sun in a dewdrop, if you want to be kind to it. See? You want to be kind to your little dog, even though it's going to pass, and you could say, oh, it's a reflection of Brahman. I'll name you dog. You're the opposite of God, so I'll name you dog. And now you're a dog forever in the mind. You see, dogs will come and go by the millions, in and out of the process. They'll never die. Just that one form you're attached to, see, and it dies and you get unhappy, but there are millions of dogs. Even that one form doesn't really die, it just goes back to Prakriti, back to its unmanifested form in the great mind. If you really want to find it again, you can. Just meditate, find it. Find your ancestors, find the gods and goddesses, find the Trinity, commune with them. They're all inside of you. And that's what this meditation is all about. You'll find it all inside of you. That's why the quote says, find everything in Om, and find Om in yourself. If Om, the doorway, gave rise to all of this, if you go this way, that's called evolution. But if we want to take it and go involution style with it, right? And this can all be done in an hour. The great yogis who have realized that this is not real, that this is the non-self, can do this all in a few minutes. It's just an exercise to them, because they've already arrived. They don't really need to do the involution and evolution process anymore. That's what enlightenment is, that's what freedom is. They might go back and enumerate it in their mind just to help explain it to you, but they've already run the amber stairs of birth and death up and down so many times that they know them like the back of their hand. But you have forgotten that there's even such a thing as an inner self. There's even such a thing as the kingdoms of heaven within. You think there's some sort of strange idea that some person wrote in a book called the Bible. There was just some cryptic remark Christ made off the top of his head. See, think a being like that would make any remark like that casually? Or is he just staring at the vision and trying to find words, like Buddha was, to explain what he just saw to you? Ramakrishna put it this way: I was a salt doll and I walked into an ocean. I had a hell of a time getting myself out of that, see? Because that was my true nature. So I have to come back here and form to you. It's a great sacrifice. It's called yajna. I'm taking on a great sacrifice, producing a form in front of you, so that I can tell you about the formless nature. Now, go inside. So, the dissolving of the mind stream, I'm not going to go into it in depth. You dissolve the 5 elements back into the 10 senses. Yes, you have 10 senses, because you have 5 in dream tonight too. So you dissolve these 5 elements into the 10 senses. Don't you see in a dream, and touch in a dream, and taste in a dream, and smell in a dream, and so forth? So you have these subtle senses and subtle worlds that you create, preserve, and destroy in dream tonight. Like a kid builds a sandcastle on the beach and watches the ocean destroy it laughing, you see. You do that every night in dream. You build a sandcastle of a world many times and destroy it inside of that dream state. Those are called your subtle senses and your subtle worlds. You only think they're figments of your imagination because some Some fool has told you that they are. Some person who doesn't know that consciousness is behind them, and that the conscious power is doing the creating, preserving, and destroying. But they don't know these beings. They have not walked up to them and met them yet. They don't know the great Trinity. The 10 senses into the tanmatras, that is, the 5 subtle elements are there: odor, flavor, visibility, tangibility, and audibility. And that's your 5 senses in a subtle form. The power of the eyes to see, the power of the ears to hear, those are powers in their own. They're not just the fleshy orb and the flap of skin on your face, right? You ever thought of that? Are my senses my eyes? Are my senses my ears? No. How can they be? There's a power in my senses to see. There's a power to hear. And those are subtle senses. That's why they call these indriyas, dasindriyas, the 10 indriyas. Indriya is the god of all gods. So the senses are considered little gods in this tradition. Indriya. They're my 5 indriyas, or my 10 indriyas. They're God manifesting through the senses, in other words. So you see the all-pervasiveness again of the chapter we're in. You see, all-pervasiveness. God is in everything, even in the senses. So it's not like you can run away and hide, but it is like you should dissolve your attachment to what you think they are, to come to know what you know they are. And that's going to be a process that you engage into. If you dissolve those, you understand the tanmatras and the indriyas, and dissolve them into the life force, then you'll find out that there's a flow going through everything. People call it go with the flow, you see. Or there's an energy, you see. A divine energy that no one sees. Or man does not live by bread alone. It's probably one of the higher expressions of that. That there's an energy that man lives by that is manning the senses. It's causing the eyes to see. If I can get on that great Garuda bird called prana, then like Vishnu, I can ride it inside. And as I go inside, I'll ride it to the antakarana, the fourfold mind. Then I'll see how the universes all came out of mind, and how my mind came out of the great mind. And I just see the step-down process that clearly. You could call it, everything that's individual into the collective, into the cosmic. You see, the 3 worlds are right there in those sets of 5s, those 4 or 5 sets of 5s. This is called a quintuplication process. Every good Hindu knows the quintuplication process, the sets of 5s. Be aware of 2s, take recourse in the 3s, and study the 5s. See, could put it to every little Hindu boy, see, and girl. Because then you're going to know the kingdoms of heaven within you. You're going to know the cosmology that your religion's based upon. And if your religion is stripped of its cosmology, then you lose faith in it. It doesn't have any practical basis anymore. No solid foundation to stand upon, so it becomes superstitious, becomes emotionalized. Then it's not religion anymore. Dropped its upper case, and it's now just a caricature of itself. So the cosmology has to stand firm, as this one has for thousands of years. That's why we teach it. It's connected to the Vedanta. It's connected to yoga. It's connected to Buddhism. It's connected to Tantra. Everyone borrowed these 25 cosmic principles, the sets of 5s. So if you dissolve the collective mind, you reach the individual mind, you'll find that it's invested with dualities, thoughts, intelligence, and ego. Now I know what my mind's made up of. See? I know where the will comes from. And I'm not in doubt anymore. It's not scattered across some physical universe. It's not associated with a brain anymore. Because that's all we think of in the West is brain-oriented. But we don't know the mind yet. So we've discovered the mind. And we've discovered that the mind is an inner principle. And we've discovered that out of mind's thinking process, everything solidifies. Pillow thought first, then solid pillow next. It just has to go through this quintuplication process. In my dream, it was a dream pillow. Now it's a solid pillow. Take my dream away, the solid pillow won't exist anymore. You can destroy the solid pillow, but you can't destroy the dream pillow. That's going to exist forever. So back in the mind, what to speak of your mind and the cosmic mind, everything exists at all times. Sarvosmi. Existence is. Nobody says, I am not. Everyone says, I am. Nobody should say nothing doesn't, everyone should know that nothing doesn't exist. There's no such thing as nothing. There's only this great something. Existence itself is God. You don't argue, in my tradition, whether God exists or not. You put both of those aside and you say God is existence, and just get the matter over with. And then you proceed to uncover. So this dissolution process, you'll dissolve that individual mind back into the cosmic mind. And the cosmic mind will nicely go back into Om with its Trinity. The Trinity has Om written on its hand, in case you didn't notice in the posters. Ram has Om written on his hand, you see. He's saying basically, you go beyond me and you go to formlessness. Om is formlessness. You dissolve everything into Om. And that Om is inside of yourself, humming all the time. You might hear it tonight in deep sleep as you wake up. And all those worlds that you created out of it dissolve in it. It's all conceptualism. So those who want to know the formless, they will get busy mastering the dissolution process. And since everything exists at all time, dissolution has no fear. You can dissolve it, but you can't destroy it. It'll just go back into its potential. And it can come forward at any time you want it to. The only difference is now you're the master of when it comes and goes. And it's not dragging you from birth to death and death to birth anymore. The great souls project their lives, pick their parents, pick their countries, pick their gender before they're in the body. Just read your Tibetan Book of the Dead to clarify that. They're good choosers. Others go without a choice, randomly. Well, like a roulette wheel process, you see. Taking chance. Maya, born in samsara. So we'll look a little bit more at this and the sloka associated with it after our break, because we've run out of time. So here, let us take 5 or 10, 15 minutes maybe, and the live streaming audience can see these on their screens at home. I'll leave them up so you can come look at them closer too. In the meantime, we will come back and see you after we liquefy and aerate with the great elements and their gods. We are back live streaming with my students on the East-West Coast, hopefully some of them even in India, although the time zone is quite different. And also some of my students in Hawaii, if it's not too early. I know some of them tuned in at about 6 a.m. to try and 6:30 a.m. to try and connect with our live streaming. So this is a great addition to what we offer. Even if you aren't there live with us, you can look back on these on the Advaita Ashrama website and see these classes later. Advaita Academy, Advaita Ashrama is our Ramakrishna order. But Advaita Academy website. So in that way you can always catch up with or stay in tune with the cutting edge of Vedanta. We said Mother Kali has that wisdom sword, so she's always on the edge. That edge, by the way, is knowledge. Knowledge. It puts you on the ledge of realization, and it also does so by giving you that edge of higher wisdom that makes you a knower. So that's what we've been talking about in terms of this most recent sloka we just looked at. We've taken 2 slokas in the first half of our class. The first one having to do with, as we look back, the Prakasha Shakti, Avarana Shakti, and Vikshepa Shakti. The accent in this chart was put on Prakasha Shakti. In the teachings, you usually heard the accent put on veiling and distorting power. But really, it's not brought out that much, the Prakasha Shakti, the revelatory power. So people need that third way out, need that higher way of thinking. And so that's the 3 gunas again. You're thinking in terms of tamas and rajas. I'm lazy, I'm fitful, I'm restless, I'm unsettled. But you should start thinking in terms of I am balanced, and I can achieve balance in everything I do. Especially necessary, say, even in work, to achieve that balance. There are great workers, I said, like Christ and Buddha, who lived a long time. Their work was, everything they did and thought was in a very sattvic state, necessarily so. And so no negative ramifications coming back at them. And their work lived forever. And then we looked at this beautiful chart with Mother Kali as the backdrop, connecting up the 3 Shaktis, the 3 Maya Shaktis, that is, with the Lord of creation, preservation, and destruction, or actually sometimes we're calling that projection, sustenance, and withdrawal is a better way of saying. The old way of saying was creation, preservation, and destruction, but we have to say that sort of tongue-in-cheek because there's nothing that ever gets created or destroyed. It all just comes out of unmanifested nature, formlessness, sports in form for a while, and then it doesn't get destroyed. It just simply goes back to its subtle form. And that was the idea around this teaching here next, the subtle form of Shiva, according to the gross form of Shiva. Air, earth, fire, water, and ether, lightning, and all that actually has its subtle components behind the scene. And when clouds die, and when lightning goes away, and when water and earth go away at the end of long cosmic cycles, they just go back into their ideas, into their ideation, which is in the mind again, which then brought us to this chart, you see. So if you want to put it musically, as we went along this way, and since it's Mother's Day, you could put it this way. Jayanti Mangala Kali Bhadra Kali Kapalani Durga Kshama Shive Datri Swaha Swada Namostute Narayani Namostute So, salutations to thee, O Kali, Bhadra Kali, gentle Kali, who holds the skull. She's a contradiction. She's wrathful looking. She holds the skull, but her interior is all benign. She saves her precious spiritual children from the very gunas that she projects. One has to just take refuge in the Prakasha Shakti rather than in the Avarani and Vikshepa Shakti. If you want to be deceived, if you want to be deluded, if you want to be restful and restless, and if you want to be slothful, then you can have those. She's provided for you. It's called Avarana and Vikshepa Shakti. But if you get tired of those and you want to be balanced and peaceful, restful instead of restless, then you will head for her Prakasha Shakti and live in a balanced state, equanimous state. So musically you could say that. Now if you look at the Shiva side of it, and then you could sing it this way, as we often do, and which is on one of our most recent Jaima music releases. Shankara Mahadeva Deva, Shankara Mahadeva Deva, Shankara Mahadeva Deva, Sevaka Sura Jake, Lapati Japati Javo Byala, Uroda Bhagachala, Vrundamala Chandrafala, Drigvishala Jake, Shankara Mahadeva Deva, Shankara Mahadeva Deva, Shankara Mahadeva Deva, Sevaka Sura Jake. In other words, a tiger skin wrapped around his handsome body. His cosmic dance astounds his legions. Transported, they watch as writhing snakes and disheveled hair swirl around a graceful neck, garlanded with skulls. Light from the crescent moon on his brow enhances the enthralling scene. Tulsidas stands enwrapped and enraptured by this vision of Shiva dancing his cosmic dance. So Tulsidas, one of the more famous of all the Indian songwriters and poets, has even made its way here to the West in some of the songs like that you hear about Ram. He was a great devotee of Ram. He also wrote songs to the Divine Mother. So if you can recall these great philosophical teachings, because these songs come from them. It's not like our songs here in the West come mostly from emotion, but their songs come from devotion married to philosophy. And so their lyrics are going to be pregnant with meaning. So after you hear one of those songs, you're going to think, and you're also going to be inspired. And if you dance, it's going to be dancing in the light of Shiva, like Shiva. You see, writhing snakes around your neck and skulls and everything. See, you're dancing the dance of destruction's dance, dissolving everything back into the mind. See, you're your own creator. You're your own dissolver of name and form. And so that's where we arrive next. And that's a technique they use, dissolving the mind stream. And we pretty much looked at it. We didn't look at the Mahat, or the cosmic mind. What's that consist of, so that we have an idea. Projection, sustenance, and withdrawal, or dissolution, as I just said. If you want to put it in terms of polytheism, or put it in terms of anthropomorphism, then you'd say they're deities, they're beings, they're forms. But you can also put it in terms of energy and philosophy, in which case they are the power of projection, sustenance, and withdrawal that's in you. Those are Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva operating in you. They're your gods and goddesses, they're your trinity. And you can see what one of the more primal, or primeval, as the Upanishad says, powers that come out of that. Time, kala, space, desha, causation, nimitta, solidity, liquidity, luminosity, homogeneity. You can see where these begin to match with audibility, tangibility, visibility, flavor, and odor back in the subtle body, and how those match with earth, air, fire, water, and ether back in the gross body. These are direct correlations, these five, and these five, pretty much telling you what your three bodies consist of and your three worlds consist of. One's solid, one's dreamlike, you see, and one's formless, deep sleep. In other words, a gross, a subtle, and a causal body. And those teachings have been there in India's religious traditions for time immemorial. So, also look at this, because this is the subtitle of our whole chapter, right? All pervasiveness is there in the cosmic mind. You finally reach that place, like I said, the Om sign written on the hand of the great avatar, where you understand that the word is, you are approaching the realm of the word. And as you approach the realm of the word, you see that everything is coming out of it, and you're going against the stream, against the grain, and you're trying to merge into it. So there's these simultaneous movements that are going on. The sound of the word is emanating, and it's also, as it were, like a black hole. It's like sucking all form back into it. And time included. And Ramakrishna said, when I first beheld Om within me, I saw that all worlds were coming out of it and all worlds were dissolving into it in a simultaneous moment. It wasn't taking billions of years to do this, like an evolutionary cycle. That's all in Maya. But the actuality of it was that all worlds were being formed, created, that is, or projected, we say, and dancing and playing and then being withdrawn back into Om, simultaneously, as if in an eternal moment. It was always going on. Isn't it sort of like your dream state? Right now you're in dream number 1, you see, but tonight you'll be in dream number 2. That's how Ramana Maharshi put it. And then tonight sometime you'll also be in dreamless state, 3, the third state. And then if you can get beyond the 3 states and the 3 bodies, you'll be in the 4th state, Turiya. Turiya means fourth. It's also a word for samadhi. So beyond the 3 worlds is this 4th state of consciousness, which the great souls reach and adhere to and realize their true nature in that. And that's really the purpose of the dissolution of the mind stream. You can think in terms of Om. It's the greatest bijam of all time. There is no other bijam better than Om for transcendence. It's Brahman's word. That's how Ramakrishna put it. That's Brahman's word. Bijam means a seed. Like on your mala is a seed, 108 seeds, right? So these bijams are just infused with power, subtle power, and are used to create, project, and sustain the worlds, and withdraw them. Importantly, withdraw them. When you finally withdraw them completely, then you find Om is inside of you, and then you dissolve that final vestige of the subtle sense of self or individuality into Brahman, and that's called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or Satori in Zen. I'll be teaching a Zen retreat next week up in Portland, off the Wind River, off the Columbia River Gorge. Zen Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta, it's called. We'll look at these 2 great non-dual darshanas, they're called. Well, so you can see how a dissolution of the mind stream would happen. You could also see how it would get re-projected. Projection, creation, and withdrawal, all going on in this one powerful meditation that you do. And so you're invited to do this, and you're even advised to do this. You start with earth, meditate on it. I was saying that, the illumined souls can do this in a few minutes, and just recall it to mind because they've already accomplished mastery of all these principles. They're called tattvas. First they memorized them, then they learned about them, then they meditated on them and experienced them, and after that was done, then the whole process goes in and out. Just like birth, life, and death goes on for them. But for the rest of us, and for those who are practitioners, or those of us who are novices, or those of us even who are more adept, whatever level we happen to be in the circular race that we're running in, called the search for enlightenment, then we can do that accordingly. And the novice is probably best to start out, like Father of Yoga says, take earth and concentrate on it for a week. Just an hour in your meditations each day, and think of earth in every way you can possibly think of it. Not just physical earth, but dirt, mud. Think of it in terms of nations. Think of it in terms of planets. Think of, importantly, how it disappears in deep sleep, and how you dream it in dreaming state. Think of earth in every way you can possibly think of it. Come to know earth, know it, and master it, and be free of fear of it. And be able to attend it and leave it in your meditation. So maybe people think, I'm going to try and get beyond my thoughts now, but they're thinking, and everything is happening on earth, aren't they? So what happens if you remove the earth? Then nothing can happen on it, you see. So you're actually looking into the nature of earth, dissolving it, removing it, taking it out of the picture. It's a dissolution of the mind stream meditation. It's common to yoga and Vedanta. It's rather the traditional way that one would meditate in those traditions. There are other ways. But this is called knowing the tattvas, the principles. Tattva Gyan, it's called knowledge of principles that are within you. They're all in you, in your consciousness. They're not outside. So you begin to make the connections inside, and therefore it's easier for you to be free of them outside. And in the meantime, you're having a hard time getting free of them, both inside and outside. You think about them all the time, and then you're reborn all the time here. So in order to gain that superlative and singular kind of mastery that is transcendence, called transcendence, then you're going to want to dissolve these. And so you take each one of these, and pretty soon, as you take them and meditate on them, you know them as sets of fives. And when you know them as sets of fives, you can dissolve them as sets of fives. I now dissolve the five elements into my senses. And you sit there and think about that. How earth goes with smell. How water goes with taste. How fire goes with sight. How air goes with touch. And how ether goes with hearing. And so you meditate on the connection. Oh, I see, there's a connection here. I'm not just living a disparate and fragmented life here. It's not just all random out here with no meaning. There's actually a connection to things. And guess what? I think I can use that to live a connected life. What a novel idea, to actually be balanced. To actually know what I consist of. Or to know what my non-self consists of, because Vedanta and Yoga has a couple surprises for you as you move in this process. You're going to point you toward your formless nature. That is, everything will die, but you. Everything will go away, but you, the great self, lives forever, and everything comes out of it. So that's the one thing you have yet to experience. You may know it intellectually, even if you're an adept, and you've been at it a long time, but you still haven't had the actual experience of watching all of that dissolve in, like Ramakrishna, Ramana Maharshi, Swami Vivekananda, and others, and just looked at everything dissolving and saying, how marvelous, there's something left. What's that? Me. The whole thing has come out of me, and the whole thing comes back into me. Now I know who the self is. See, now I can dissolve that self into the ultimate self, the ocean of consciousness. And have that superlative samadhi that is my true nature. The salt doll went ahead and walked in the ocean after all. See? The hailstone went ahead and fell in the sea, and it dissolved there. And there was no form to come back. Nobody ever measured that ocean. There's no form came out of it. Let's read how Ramakrishna puts it in a less highfalutin philosophical way. He says, when a sugar cube dissolves into hot liquid, it first breaks in half, then into small chunks, then into granules. Finally, there is nothing left but sweet liquid. Similarly, when the mind moves towards authentic meditation, it first contemplates the dual world, then the many teachings, then the living particles of its own intelligence, that's the granule stage, and finally enters full immersion. What remains then is one blissful, indivisible, homogeneous mass of pure conscious awareness. Now go and enjoy your tea time with that in mind. Anytime you can never put a sweetener and sugar in tea anymore without thinking a little differently. That's why Chado is in Zen. Chado way is the Zen, the tea way. You have tea with the roshi, you see, and it's all very perfect. Everything is perfect, it's immaculate. You're like in samadhi as you take tea. The whole thing's been set that way. Like a beautiful Zen painting, you see. Just one motion and it's done. So that kind of inherent perfection is brought out of everyday activity, and you're not walking around clumsily blundering through everything in your life, you see. Now you're moving gracefully as if everything is Brahman. The all-pervasiveness of Brahman is known to you. All brought about by a meditation such as that. Or, again, putting it musically. Sharada Ramakrishna Name Bande Kechere Bai Sharada Ramakrishna Name Bande Kechere Bai Veshabhuban Veshe Gelo Aha Boli Hari Jai Veshabhuban Veshe Gelo Aha Boli Hari Jai Ram Krishna Bole Bande Kechere Bai Sharada Ramakrishna Name Bande Kechere Bai. What's he saying in that Bengali tune? This man, Chandikananda, his name is. He's saying, the courageous devotee who stands before the onrush of these waves of pure bliss, that is, who comes to know, stands at the edge, knowledge, and to the edge of formlessness, beholds the dissolution of the entire phenomenal universe as if it were swept away in an overwhelming conflagration of unifying love. That's what he's saying. What an awesome sight, what an unimaginable experience. Could you have written a song like that unless you'd experienced something like that? Do you catch the sweet wind, spiritual wind, that fragrance of their grace? Have you caught it yet? Why not raise your sail to catch it? Strike off the moorings which tie your boat to the harbor of mundane attachments. Sing Ma, Ma, Ma. Pray earnestly for her grace and take refuge in Kali, the Divine Mother of the universe. It's a nice song, isn't it? It's more than nice, it's real nice. It's unreal nice, in fact, is what it is. So that's what happens to the person who stands on the edge of knowing, knowledge. They have this superlative experience of dissolution of the mind stream. Think of it, there's a mind stream. Now think of it independently, individually. You have your mind stream, right? You have a stream of consciousness that wakes, dreams, goes to deep sleep, wakes again. Thinks of it in terms of minutes, days, weeks, months, years, a lifetime. Hopefully many lifetimes, you can work that in there. And that's your mind stream, your own particular mind stream, and it's filled with thoughts and fantasies and conceptualizations and delusions and sufferings and miseries and conceptions and hopes and fears and attachments, blisses and ecstasies, joys and sorrows. It's your mind stream. Now think of it on a collective level. If you massed an entire separate unit, like all the individual people in the Bhutakasha, all the humans into one mass, and all the ancestors into another, in the prana, they're in the prana. And then the gods and goddesses, in the Trinity, in the great minds, subtle mind and great mind into another. Then you have this collective mind stream that's impossible, you see, to do away with. You're going to have to write it. Inward, inward, ever inward, like Buddha did, until you hear that word, or you see that light. Some people hear, some people see. See, important about these senses again. See, these indriyas have a great power, so some are visionary, some are mystic. So the mystics will hear, the visionaries will see. And so one will arrive at that superlative vision or that sound of Om, and merge it all into the ocean of Brahman. They'll merge themselves into that. See? And that's the death of death. People think, if my ego dies, I die. But actually they don't know if the ego is lying as the obscuring power in front of that, on not only the individual level, but the cosmic and collective too. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva also have a thin veil. It's called the Rudra Granthi. A thin veil lying between this chakra and this chakra. See? And another thin veil lying between this chakra and this chakra, and another thin veil lying between these three chakras and this heart chakra. Brahma Granthi, Vishnu Granthi, and Shiva, Rudra Granthi, they call it. Knots, veils, that maintain the sense of individuation inside of consciousness. Like lines drawn on water, Ramakrishna said. They make the one indivisible mass of pure conscious awareness, as we were just saying, seem like it's 2 or 3 or 5. So the intrepid spiritual practitioner, journeyer, going within, will move through those subtle membranes in meditation, pierce through them. And he will do so by arming him or herself with knowledge of what lies behind what he's giving up. You don't burn bridges, see. You are constantly reconstructing them and dissolving them as you need them. It's like walking up to the end of a canyon, you take your step out and a bridge forms there for you, see, spontaneously. So the inward spiritual traveler, intrepid spiritual traveler, has this facility, has this faith too, that that's all there. It just needs to uncover it from the veiling and distorting power of Maya. That's probably a very good way of unwrapping this second sloka. I mean, because what he's saying there is, after projecting and maintaining all the worlds, he finally withdraws them into himself. Shiva, Rudra. So, make friends with him. You need friends in high places. And therefore, when you find this great friend, the Lord, Dina Bandhu, the best friend of all beings, then you will avail yourself of his power or her power, and via that you'll become who you truly are. You'll give up becoming, in fact, and become pure being. Now, the third sloka we read, though God is the projector of heaven and earth, nevertheless, he is the real owner of all eyes, faces, hands, and feet in the universe. It is that one who inspires them all to do their respective duties in accordance with knowledge, past actions, and tendencies, and the various beings with which they appear to be associated. So, looking onward to a chart about the 3 states, the 7 limbs, and the 19 mouths, we get another look at this beautiful cosmology put in Vedic terms. This is Vedic. In fact, it's pretty much pre-Vedantic. The original rishis thought in this word, in this term. The 7 limbs are, there you see, the sun, his 2 eyes, the air and wind, his breath. His head is the heavens, the sky is his body, water is his lower organ, and the earth is at his feet. From his feet the earth has originated. That's the 7 limbs. Or if you wanted to sing it, again in music style, you could say, Om Agnir Murta Chakshushi Chanda Suryo Vishaha Shrutrivak Vivritasha Vedaha Vayu Prana Hridaya Vishvamasha Padbayam Prativihi Sarva Bhutanturatmam Om. That one divine being is the indwelling presence in all things, in all persons. Fire is his head, sun and moon his 2 eyes. The revelation of Scripture, his cosmic mind. The universe is his heart, his arms and legs, the four directions. Music is his breath. Music is his voice, the wind is his breath. And from his feet the earth is originated. That's how they thought in ancient India. As I already said, they worshipped ritual. The first part of the Vedas is all rituals, more than you could possibly ever hope to translate into English. What to speak of actually perform all those rituals. They had so many, more than you could shake a stick at, as my granny used to say. And after they had finished their time with ritual, they knew the gods of all the cosmic process very well, you see. And they knew that they were inside of them. Where else would they be? Have you ever seen them dancing outside somewhere on some planet? Or they're inside of you, of course. Kingdoms of heaven are within you. So they made relationships with those beings and their energy, and learned to use their energy, befriend them. May the gods shower their grace upon us. That kind of idea. And then when they did that, the next part of the Upanishads, next part of the Vedas was all about singing. It was hymns. They made hymns to that. So that go along with the rituals, see. They had to express what they had found in song, so they made these beautiful hymns. Slokas, put the slokas into chanting and so forth. Then after that, they went to the forest and meditated more. It's called the forest dweller portion of their existence. And it was about then that the Upanishads start to come out of the Vedas. And then finally you have what's called sannyas, see, the free souls. So those four sections of the ancient Vedas, very well expressed in a teaching such as this. Let's see what the 19 mouths are. Well, you saw them here. It's the fourfold mind, which is there. The 5 cognitive senses, Gyanendriyas, hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, and smelling, and the 5 karmendriyas, the active senses. They're given specific titles here: speaking, handling, locomotion, procreating, and excreting. Those are your 10 senses. And the 5 pancha maha bhutas. That's what they call air, earth, fire, water, and ether. It means the great elements. It wasn't just like, oh, the elements, I've transcended them. Because the elements, you'll find them back here in the cosmic mind, right? As solidity, liquidity, luminosity, homogeneity, and all pervasiveness. Doesn't that sound like earth, air, fire, water, and ether to you? Only in a very, very subtle state. So where did these 5 elements come from? From ideas in the cosmic mind. So therefore, where does the universes in space and time come from? From the cosmic mind. The mind projects everything. All it has to do is start vibrating. In Shaivism, they're called spandas, vibrating spheres. In Tantra, it's called Shrishtirahasya, the secret of creation. In Yoga and Vedanta, it's called Om, see, the word. So wherever you look, there's this idea of the from the infinite, the finite has come. Yet being infinite, only infinite remains. From the infinite, the finite has come. But even the finite is infinite, right? You can't find an end to sky, leaves, trees, rivers. Even at the end of the effects of the Big Bang, so you won't even be able to find an end to it, because they'll just retreat back to their subtle causes again. Everything's based on cause and effect. That's why nimitta, causality, is there in the cosmic mind. See, it's original cause, they call it. Actually, they call this the unstruck sound, Om. It's always humming. Nobody strikes it, the Tantras say. It's always vibrating of its own nature. The three states are A, U, and M of Om. In the first state, you are outwardly cognitive. In the second state, you're outwardly cognitive, and the waking state is your field. You're playing in the waking state. That's A of Om. In the U of Om, you're inwardly cognitive, and you're in the dream state, and you're playing with dream objects. Both are 7-limbed and have 19 mouths for enjoying gross and subtle objects. So you have these 7 limbs inside of your dream state. You see sun shining there. You'll feel wind blowing. You think about the scriptures. Last night I had a dream where I was thinking about the scriptures. See, but that's not unusual for me. You see, I filled my whole mind with scriptures for so long that they have to be in there all the time. You see, so I'll even be dreaming them. And the 19 mouths are also in your waking state and your dreaming state. In other words, God is consuming everything. See, through is ingesting everything and enjoying everything through these 7 limbs and 9 mouths. The breath process is going on. You see, one in-breath for Brahman takes billions and billions of years, and one held breath for Brahman takes another billions and billions of years, and another out-breath for Brahman takes another billion years. Why do you think they want you to sit in Zen Buddhism, or sit in yoga class, or sit and watch your breath and count your breath, observe your breath, so you can get an idea of the individual breath, and then the breath everyone's taking. Even the breath the earth is making as it expands and contracts every day and night as the sun rises and sets. See? Always this breath of life infusing, investing everything, and leading back to dissolution, night. Everywhere you see it going on in three movements. So become aware of it, become a knower of that. And it's a kind of subtle bliss on its own. You get it from watching a sunrise or sunset, but why are you just waiting for the sunset, you see? Or waking up for the sunrise? Why isn't it there all the time? And the blazing midday sun, that's the light of Brahman for you. It's there at all times, beyond time. Time is also there as a concept in the cosmic mind. In your third state, you are pragya, the intellectual. Deep sleep is your field. You're unified, you're full of bliss, and that forms the gateway to all definite cognition. So in your deep sleep state, which is back merged in Om, all cognitions come out of that when you wake up. You say hello. You see, this is the sunrise of your next day. You say hi to the Creator first. See, if you can do it consciously after you wake up, all the better, but you're already doing it as you leave deep sleep into dream. You see Brahman and Vishnu and Shiva just go by you. It goes by so fast you forget it. See? You have to slow it down. There he is. Slow down the mental process, the vibrating of the mind field. Slow it down, like you'd slow down a film so you could freeze frame it. You could see each frame of your thinking process. See how the mind projects everything so swiftly. Faster than the speed of sound, the speed of light. Faster than the speed of light is the mind's thought process. It's swift and continuous, you see. Like flow of oil from one beaker to another without a break. Can I break the mind stream? Can I break that flow? Can I get outside of it and see it happening inside of me? Or am I going to get sucked into it each day and project myself out into the worlds of name and form and identify with them, grasp onto them? Can't I let go? I have a chance to do that every night. I wake up every morning. But I'm not. I'm falling into old habit. Prakasha Shakti is not there when I wake up. Avarana and Vikshepa Shakti are there, covering and distorting. And I'm happy with that, you see. Then I'm sad about it. I didn't bring the Triputi with me. I just fell into the realm of dualities. So there's a book now called Dissolving the Mind Stream. It will probably should be in print within a month or two. It's being proofed right now. It's all written, and it goes through the whole process for you, page by page. and these charts are included in it, with a few others. So there you see a very good amalgam of Vedic thinking around the cosmic process. 3 states, 7 mouths, 19 limbs. That's the cosmic form, Virat. He's like this big giant walking around, blah, blah, speaking in slow motion, you see. Walking around, and he's got all the planets hanging off him and all the worlds in him, you see. Everything in form is there. The Virat form, they call it. So think of it as a living being. You want to think of this earth as living instead of dying or dead or boring or full of suffering, and think of it as the Virat form. It's got all these appendages to him. And they're yours too. You partake of them. You have a mouth, you have eyes, you have ears. You're ingesting, you're digesting, and excreting all the time, out of all of them. Like Gandhi said, the world is getting tired of war, which is the child of hate. If only one person can learn to love rightly, then millions of people would learn it. See? So if you're looking, you're ingesting the world, you're processing it in your eye, and then you're excreting hate. See? I don't like it. Right? So you're going to have to purify your eye, which doesn't mean like, Captain Blah, you're going to take your eye out and polish it on your sleeve and put it back in. You got to purify the oracle of seeing. You see, the power of seeing, the power of sight itself. You have to go into the Indriya and look at that, remove the defect from it. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. Gandhi also said that, you see. So you're going to have to go beyond the teachings of the conventional scriptures, the dualistic scriptures, the fundamentalist leanings, and you're going to have to look for that eye which is single. Make that eye single and be free. So you can see then how the Upanishad and all the teachings that come and attend it are very much into that idea of all-pervasiveness. Let's look on to get more instances of that. May that one who created the gods and who supports them, who is the origin also of the cosmic soul, who confers bliss and wisdom on the devoted, destroying all sins and sorrows and punishing all breaches of law, may that one, the great seer and Lord of all, endow us with good thoughts. Klista vrittis, vibrational thoughts, are negative. Aklista are positive. So you get rid of the klista vrittis by the aklista vrittis. That's Father of Yoga's way of saying it. You look at the vibrations of your mind, see what their nature is, renounce them if they're negative. It can be your only practice. I asked Lex Sixon, our founder, once. He was in his 30s, I was just 20. He said, what's our practice then? He said, well, if you want the really good practice, just look into your mind, see everything negative there, and renounce it. Can you do that? I mean, you don't even have to really meditate to do that. You just, sit around looking at your mind. You say, what's there that's bothering me? And then you say, I don't really have the capacity for that. And all of a sudden you feel anger or hate. Oh, there's something negative. See, where did that come from? Like came out of nowhere, like beetles out of the wall. You see, it's a song of Mother India. The little white beetles of desire come out of nowhere. I don't know how to get rid of them. They're in the very fabric of my mind, you see. They're in the walls of my house. So, espying that, then you remove everything. Ramakrishna's way of saying it is, you got a pure piece of white paper, then you hold it up to light, you see all the dark specks in it. So, you may have given up coffee and smoking and gossiping and going to the bar and think you're all pure all of a sudden. But when you hold that mind up to the light of Brahman, you'll see how many impurities are there. The word purification, or let's put it this way, the word impure, ashuddhi in Sanskrit, does not mean moral impurities. It means how far away a thing is from its source. The further away a thing is from its source, the more impure it becomes. So, all of these things that we are dreaming, are playing with, you see, are all impure. At very least, they're a mixture of purity and impurity. See? But as we get closer inward, further inwards, to intelligence, to our soul and so forth, to the Word, you come upon just immaculate purity, more and more pure. If you get into the cosmic mind, things are very pure, very sattvic. Brahman's mind, Lord Brahma's mind, is said to be the more sattvic of all. And out of his mind comes the whole creation, the projection of everything. So it's projected out of sattva, but the further it falls away from him, the more it begins to collect impurities, like a ship's hull collects barnacles. It's farther away from land it gets, you see, so it just collects impurities. So you got the physical world with all these impurities here. Sins, I'm mentioning destruction of sins, terrors, horrors, that are gone in a flash when one sees one's true nature, or sees the truth. That's Sloka 4. Sloka 5, the Lord who blesses all creatures by revealing the Vedas, deign to make us happy by thy calm and blissful self, which roots out terror as well as sin. O revealer of the Vedic truths, deign to make propitious that arrow which thou holdest in thy hand for shooting at somebody. O protector of the devotees, do not destroy that benign personal form of thine which has manifested as the universe. So the seeker, the person who's beginning to arrive at the possibility of dissolving the mind stream entirely, doesn't want the form of God to go away yet. Not yet. Don't destroy that form of thine that protects the devotees, because I'm not ready yet, you see. I need you. And when I get close to you, then you can show me the doorway into Om, then I won't need you anymore, because I am you. See, you and I will be one. But in the meantime, I need that structure. Call it an aid, call it a crutch, call it whatever you want. You need friends in high places, as I said. So, if you want to know that arrow which he's holding in his hand, then you might as well ask Ram, because he's the best archer in the three worlds. And that arrow which he's holding in there is pointed with the truth teachings. So here, he gives you the teaching of another way of looking at the all-pervasiveness of Brahman. It's the three different levels of the Atman. Here's another threesome for you. Now he's taking the Atman, which is really one, and causing it to be divided into threes. This is his way, very early on, even before Krishna, of explaining it. He says here, I shall tell you the truth about the Paramatman, the Atman, and the Anatman. Like the sky, which has its three divisions, being all-pervasive, associated with objects, and reflected in a water tank, so too is consciousness, pure, then associated with the intellect, and then reflected in the intellect. So if you heard that story earlier, I was telling about the sun shining in all the dewdrops, and that's how Brahman pervades everything. It's here, but it's not an object. Then you'll understand this teaching about how the sky can be unbounded, vast expanse, without any associations. There's not even a mountain range to define it on the horizon. You see, it seems to cut the sky, doesn't it? A mountain range. And then all of a sudden it's not formless anymore, there's form. So you're just looking totally up and it's just all formless. Or you could have this second level of the sky called associated with objects. Like, see, how about the air that's caught inside a clay jar, you see? Or how about the air that's permeating everything, every object? Ether permeates it even more, but air is also in every object. So there's its association with objects. Or, like I said, the good and bad smells crossing the air, but the air not being tainted by them. It's just a mere association. And then finally that object, that air, that sky, that akasha, we might as well use that word akasha because we've been using it already, that's reflected in a water tank. It's mirage-like. You're seeing the whole tree line and the mountains and the moon and everything in that beautiful expanse of water. You touch it and it just waves, you see. It's illusory. So like that, he says, it's the Paramatman, the Supreme Self, totally unassociated with any form. You're going to have to become that to know that. You're going to have Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or Satori, or a Sampragyata Samadhi, unseated Samadhi, or Nirvana of Buddha. You're going to have that experience to know that. And then there's the Atman itself. There's the Paramatman, and then there's the Atman. The Atman is associated with things, isn't it? We have that teaching of the Adara system in Vedanta. It has 5 sheaths. The Atman took on 5 sheaths. Gross sheath, body, subtle sheath, prana, energy. The 3rd sheath, mind, 4th sheath, intelligence, intellect, and the 5th sheath, ego. So it has 5 coverings. Guess what? The covering power of Shakti, Vikshepa Shakti and Avarana Shakti are underway. The game's afoot. The Atman, which is really indivisible, like the sky, has taken on 5 coverings of its own volition. It's just a matter of whether it did so consciously or not. In the case of the Lumen Souls, they took their 5 coverings consciously. And actually, if you read the book when it comes out, I've got a chapter at the end which starts from the standpoint of an illumined soul who wants to get into the physical body. And I've mapped it out to where he comes out of that and he sees Om, and he sees the aperture in Om where things are coming in and where souls are going out. And he follows that, goes out the aperture, finds himself in the cosmic mind, salutes Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and falls below them into a 4-fold mind, takes on a mind himself, a 5-fold, well, actually only 3 parts of it. Then he takes on the 4th part in the prana, takes on the 5th part when he gets to the senses in the body, in the 5 elements. And all the time he's doing this consciously. And all the time that bliss he felt here is getting less and less. He's getting further and further away from his source. But unlike us, he holds on to the remembrance of where he came from. There are songs in India that even sing that. Oh, mother told me, come son, you're going down there to take on a body. And then she winked at me. The wink means, don't forget where you came from. Never forget you have a mother. Who said that? Shri Sharada Devi He Mahamate. Shri Sharada Devi, the Holy Mother, said that to us just less than 200 years ago. So, in fact, in the 1900s. So she said, don't forget you have a mother. The Divine Mother is there in all of us. So she sends us down here, as it were, into the realm of name and form, and she asks us not to forget. So that great soul that comes out, evolving, as it were, takes on these forms, these 5 coverings, and never forgets itself. And then that's why there's shining so much light through the body, through the eyes, through the senses, through the mind, particularly through the intellect. So much light coming from them, because they haven't forgotten. So, otherwise, you'll see the Atman is associated with these 5 sheaths, upadis, koshas, coverings, however you want to put it, unconsciously. And it comes out a fool. See, it's completely fool, as it does not know, it's ignorant of its true nature, where it came from. And it forgets everything about where it came from, and this world is all there is. It's called being a materialist. Essentialist. So you're pretty much there in the elements and the senses only. That's your life. Just so you understand the teaching more fully, then I've put this. There's Ram pointing out the Atman to Sita and everything, and then Lakshmana looking on, his half-brother. They're exiled into the forest, and therefore dispatching asuras and demons that live there. And Ram, this comes about, says, "Deign to make propitious that arrow which thou holdest in thy hand for shooting at somebody." So brings to mind that idea of Ram. So he's like an arrow. He's pointing out all of these things in which these three states of the Atman exist. They exist as the sky of awareness inside of him. Witness consciousness, pure consciousness. In fact, not just inside of him, inside of the hearts of all beings. There in the heart, where all the subtle nerve endings meet, like the spokes of a chariot wheel at the hub, abides the Atman. Stationary but becoming manifest, meditate upon that self as Om, and Godspeed to you in crossing over to the farthest shore, beyond all darkness. Out of the Upanishads, you see. So, there in the heart, where all the subtle nerve endings meet, that's where the Atman, that's where you meditate. Don't meditate here or here or here yet. Meditate here until you've set a foundation. Let consciousness rise naturally from there. In the heart is where the Atman abides. So there in the heart of Ram, especially that fully realized soul, he was the earliest avatar we know of, is that pure conscious awareness, which is the Paramatman, the Supreme Soul. Then he's pointing out the reflections in different things. There's a reflection body, his brother. There's a reflection deer. There's a reflection called earth. There's a reflection called rocks. Doesn't it sound a lot like this here? You're seeing, the 7 mouths and the 7 limbs and 19 mouths and so forth. You're seeing Brahman in everything, even in the rock. You see a little Om sign painted on the rock, you see. I saw it in New York City when I was a teenager, painted on a rock in Central Park, a big Om sign. And then somebody in white paint, somebody put Om Eternal next to it, right there in public. That was one of my earliest views of Om. So, everywhere, on the rock, not just painted on the rock, but in the rock. But it's never the rock itself. See, is this all-pervasive Brahman, like sunlight in dewdrops. So it's the two-pointed teaching, which is very powerful. Vedanta wants you to reach the transcendent, right? Buddha wants you to go to nirvana, behind the ancestors. So there's a stumbling block on the way. You could get very transcendent of everything and leave everything behind in a transcendental way, but not knowing it is part of the process. Sri Ramakrishna said, very few people can jump from the lowest step to the highest step of a stairs. But if you managed to accomplish that, you would never know what the middle stairs were made of, how it felt to walk on them. See? So that's the idea of somebody who just goes from earth to Brahman, you see, in one fell swoop, as if they could. See? They don't know any of the steps of the cosmic process in between. And so how can they come back to help others? Or how can they come back to fill in gaps in their own knowledge? Find out maybe, I got to the highest cliff and I found out there was no flat part, so I was hanging there on my fingernails, and slowly sliding down the steep slope. There's no place to rest. So Sri Ramakrishna said, a bird flies very high, but it always comes to rest on the highest branch of a tree. So down from this highest state, you will come to rest in the Trinity, or in the cosmic mind, or in your own higher intelligence, you see, in sattva, whatever the case may be, so that you can rest again and make another storm at the gates of non-duality. Force the gates of Maya open and see the truth, and become so acclimatized there that, like the salt doll, will never come out again. It dissolved there. Well, there you see also of course, I was pointing out the reflection tree, the reflection deer, the reflection rock. That's the anatman, that's the non-self. The Atman itself is here listed in white. Jiva, that's the embodied being. Animals, insects, plants. Appearances in the intellect, associated consciousness, those kinds of things have more sentiency in them. Rocks and so forth have less. So my teacher used to say, in the rock, consciousness is sleeping. In the insect, consciousness is dreaming. In the animal, consciousness is half awake. In man, consciousness is awake. But in the illumined soul, consciousness is fully awake. Same Atman in all of them, but different degrees of realization. Or other times he would say, a rock reflects light from the sun very poorly. A leaf reflects it better. Lake reflects it better still, but a mirror reflects it best of all. And so we want to make our minds into mirrors for consciousness. So it reflects the light most perfectly. Sattva is the lake, no doubt, but a wind can come across that, called restlessness. Avarana vikshepa shakti, a wind of restlessness. Or the dark night of tamas can come across a lake, and then you can't see anything anymore. See? Waves, vrittis, off the lake of the mind. Obscures your vision. Obscure means avarana shakti. So on the mirror, those things will be less problematic. You'll be able to see yourself. So, like the mirror of the mind, wipe clean every day, Shankara said. I must keep my mind free of all sublations, overlays, superimpositions, limitations, so I may know myself, even here in this very body. So this is the chart that I chose to exemplify this sloka 6 of chapter 3. Now in the remaining time, which is only about 5 minutes, let's look into this last teaching, which I will start with tomorrow. Higher than this personal Brahman is the infinite supreme Brahman. Here's a real important distinction, is that those who love God with form are looking toward the Trinity, they're looking toward the avatar, they're looking toward the saint and seer, they're looking toward the acharya or the guru, they're looking towards those beings who exemplify the truth best, can explain it to them so that their ignorance can die away and they can be free. But you can't confuse that with the Supreme Brahman. That's all the personal Brahman. All forms are in the personal Brahman, therefore they're in Maya. All form is Maya. There's just higher Maya and lower Maya in that case. One's called Mahamaya, that's a name for Mother herself, and the other's just called Maya, you see, or you can call it Avarana Maya, Vikshepa Maya. The deluding power is there too. But the Supreme Brahman, that's something completely other. That's something untouched. That's something innately pure. That's something that can never be defiled. It can never be formulated. And we don't understand that in the West. I learned it from Indian Swamis, so I understand it. I got it infused into me by transmission, by associations with 2 or 3 very high-minded souls. So that idea that there is no transformation, but there's no birth and death, and no sublations or overlays, there's only one place to go for that, and that's in formlessness. You'll have to go through the word Om to get to that. You get to the Father through the Son. And that's how you bring your dissolution of the mind process to an end. You achieve it. You attain it. Upalabdhi and words like that. You see, you get this realization, and then you get some attainment under your belt, and then you march up that ladder and get fuller understanding. Therefore, I will verily flash this chart at you. We'll have to look at it tomorrow to start out. It's named appropriately in honor of this sloka, such as this, 3-7, Shvetashvatara. Mark that for tomorrow. We'll start with it. Higher than this personal Brahman, called Saguna Brahman, is the Supreme Brahman, Nirguna Brahman, which is concealed in all beings according to their bodies, and who the remaining single envelops the whole universe. Knowing that to be the Lord, one becomes immortal. So one identifying with Brahman becomes Brahman. That's how they say. If you identify with Brahman, you become Brahman. And there you see everything from the mother down. You see, falling in the realm of Saguna Brahman, all the way down to her feet, which is the earth. And then everything from that point up, Shakti, falling into under the auspice of Nirguna Brahman, no gunas, no qualities, no attributes. Yes, you can call it empty if you like, but emptiness is just a stage. Fullness is what you're going to arrive at. It's empty of form, it's empty of name, it's empty of suffering, it's empty of misery, it's empty of delusion, it's empty of deceit, it's empty of gunas. That's what it's empty of. When you say emptiness, make sure you understand that. But Brahman itself, and call it Buddha nature or Allah or Almighty Father if you want, is full of everything. It's the expansive sky of awareness which holds everything, planets, beings, worlds, yet is never affected by them. That's what they want to bring across here in 3.7 of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. And we'll look at that tomorrow more closely. All of these little things are very good teachings to look at. And this is a new chart. I don't know if you've seen it yet in San Francisco, but we'll have, it's called Vedanta 110. I think there's only about 113 Vedanta charts, so it was the most recently created specifically for this sloka of the Upanishad. I'll repeat it and then we'll end. Higher than the personal Brahman is the infinite supreme Brahman, concealed in all beings. How is it concealed? Like oil and sesame seeds, like fire and wood, like honey and hives, like whiteness in milk, like wetness in water. It's concealed. You have to bring it out. Form covers it, which is back to our very first teaching this morning, Avarana Shakti. Form covers it. So always look to strip away the form. And know the form as you strip it away, because you might need it again. You don't burn bridges, as we said. We'll look more into that tomorrow at the same time for those who are looking at live stream, 9:30 West Coast time, and for my Hawaii students around 6:30 in the morning, and those of you on the East Coast area, 12:30-ish, isn't it, and East Coast. So those 3-hour differences, another triputi we have to deal with. See. So I ask you all to return tomorrow. Also, our puja tonight at 7 o'clock, we'll do some of this worship that brought these great realizations to the rishis. So you're invited to join us for that and for prasad dinner at our SRV San Francisco ashram. So let's end here with a chant. Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrichorma Amritam Gamaya Abira Mayeti Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, and from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.